Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to a new episode of Business Insider. I'm your host for tonight, Mohammed Abdel. And tonight we'll be talking about biotechnology and its applications in human welfare and nature conservation. And we will be having our conversation with our dear guest here in the studio, Dr. Abdel Fattah Badr, the Professor of Plant Genetics and Biodiversity at Halwan University. A very good evening to you, Dr. Badr. Always a pleasure.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Dr. Badr, and dear viewers, allow us first to watch a report about our main topic for tonight, biotechnology and its applications in human welfare and nature conservation, and then we'll come back and start our discussion.
Biotechnology is technology based on biology. Biotechnology harnesses cellular and biomolecular processes to develop technologies and products that help improve our lives and the health of our planet. We have used the biological processes of microorganisms for more than 6,000 years to make useful food products such as bread and cheese and to preserve dairy products. Modern biotechnology provides breakthrough products and technologies to combat debilitating and rare diseases, reduce our environmental footprint, feed the hungry, use less and cleaner energy, and have safer, cleaner, and more efficient industrial manufacturing processes. Diseases, high level of pollution, difficulty growing crops in certain areas. Thanks to recent developments and research, biotechnology can offer us many solutions. It allows us to transform food, treat water, develop sustainable materials, and design vaccines, among many other examples. The most interesting thing is that it can be applied to multiple sectors. Egypt is keen to develop many fields using biotechnology. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has gone in 2022 to the city of Ismailia to follow up the work of implementing the projects of the City of Vaccines and Biotechnology, which is carried out through the National Service Projects Agency of the Armed Forces, in cooperation with the private sector and the establishment of the multiple global partnership. This in addition to faculties that were established in Egypt in biotechnology fields.
Thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us, and thanks to Abir Hussein for this report, and also Rasha Abdel Hamid. And we're back here in the studio with Dr. Abdel Fattah Badr, the Professor of Plant Genetics and Biodiversity at Halwan University. So, Dr. Badr, we're used to this. Whenever we talk about a certain topic, we start by definitions.
Yes.
So we are talking about biotechnology, its applications in human welfare, and nature conservation. So let's take the three of them and start with biotechnology. Simplest definition.
Identification of biotechnology is derived from biology, because biotechnology is a science of biology, but it concerns the applications of biology. So biotechnology is application of biology for producing commercial products. If you apply using technology, but for producing commercial products, seeds, food, vegetables, all medicine, vaccines, all these are biology, because we have different types of biotechnology. That's the definition of biotechnology.
Human welfare in general.
Human welfare is a very large expression. But it is inclusive, because everything that will make human life easier. With biotechnology, the medicine is discovery of medicine, methods of diagnosis of diseases, treatment of diseases, food production. All these will provide human welfare. This is based on biotechnology. Of course, human welfare is not only based on biotechnology, but can also be based on engineering or other fields of science. But with regard to biotechnology is a source of most important products for human life, for food, medicine, and so on.
Indeed.
So that's human welfare.
Conservation.
Nature conservation, of course, nature is the source of biology, because without nature, without the environment and water, we cannot have biological material. And with conserving nature is a source for biotechnology. So if you conserve our plants and animals and microorganisms, these are the sources for the products produced through biotechnology.
Right.
So we need to conserve biodiversity and nature to improve biotechnology for improving human welfare.
Well put.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Badr, we can also say that biotechnology helps in using different techniques to change or modify the products for specific uses. Give us some examples.
Yeah, but biotechnology application is old, of course. Some people say even the old Egyptians used biotechnology for making bread and butter and so on. These are biotechnology. But recent biotechnology actually is based on the discovery of fermentation. Fermentation, when microorganisms break some compounds and they do fermentation for producing beers and other drinks and so on. And also with the law of genetics, the Mendel's discovery of genetics, because the basis of genetics has improved the applications of biology, so it contributed to biotechnology, particularly the discovery of DNA structure and gene expression and genetic engineering. These have actually motivated the recent biotechnology. That's why now most universities have the PhD and PhD and the MSc degrees in biotechnology. Biotechnology now, we have colleges for biotechnology because the applications of biotechnology is increasing. So we need to teach students, and we have graduates that can actually practice biotechnology, and there is opportunities for these graduates to find the jobs in the market.
Now, does artificial intelligence, AI, have a role in developing biotechnology?
Well, the artificial intelligence is a new approach which has been promising that it would improve our understanding not only of biology but of everything, because we will actually use artificial intelligence to make discoveries easy, to make teaching easy, to make research easier, because it helps the researchers and the students to review the literature and so on. But so far, in my view, it's early to be dependent solely on artificial intelligence. It's a helpful means for scientists, but they cannot replace experimental work in the labs and in the field.
Now, I understand that biotechnology saw a great leap and a great development in the 19th century. That's in the 1800s.
Yes.
Gregor Mendel.
Yeah.
So talk to us about that part of history, please.
Yeah, and the fermentation, and Gregor Mendel actually discovered the principles of genetics. And with the principles of genetics, people were surprised why human being discovered genetics so late, not like
Right. It's a legitimate
mathematics,
question,
like mathematics or chemistry,
a legitimate question,
and so on.
really.
But even Mendel was not a scientist. He was a priest. He studied genetics and worked as a teacher for some years, but he then lived as a priest. And he was actually making hybridization with bees in the garden, and he discovered the Mendel principles, that how the characters is controlled when transferred from one generation to generation. These were implants, but then we discovered that the rules apply for all living organisms. With the 19th century, because he was not a biologist, his discoveries were ignored for almost 35 years. He published his data 1865, but it was rediscovered 1990. And that's 1990, in the beginning of the first year of 19th century, of the 20th century.
1900, you
1900,
mean?
sorry,
Yes.
1900. And 1900 actually is considered the start of science of genetics, and then the geneticists started to work on cell division and to understand how the traits, how the characters is actually transferred from parents to offsprings and so on.
Very interesting.
And with the discovery of DNA, because
when was DNA?
DNA actually, the first proposal that DNA is the material of gene, is the science of gene, came from a microbiologist who actually was working on bacteria. And he discovered that the bacteria change its shape if the DNA came from another bacteria. He called this transformation. Transformation means the form of the bacteria is changed if material from another bacteria came to this bacteria. That's a discovery of transformation. But in 1944, three American scientists discovered that DNA is a material that causes transformation. And then after 8 years, in 1953, Thomas, the DNA molecule was discovered, what we call double helix. And the discovery of DNA is actually the most important discovery in the 20th century, because it opens the way for not only genetics, but for genetic engineering and molecular biology, and most of the discoveries now is based on the DNA. You know, Watson and Crick, you know, the two scientists who published the double structure of DNA. That was published in the very, very famous journal called Nature, and since then probably most of the research in genetics is based on DNA.
I mean, it's very interesting to look into the history of the development of this science. Do you yourself, Dr. Badr, have an explanation for why this science was relatively a late discovery indeed?
Yes. Because the means were not available for making the discovery. Mendel did not practice any DNA. He didn't know what DNA is. But with the discovery of DNA, the biochemists made a great contribution to understanding the genetics at the molecular level. And in the 70s, the discovery of what we call now genetic engineering was very important, because we discovered that it's possible to transfer DNA from one species to another, and to work with DNA as a chemical substance in the test tube. So we can not only exhibit genes from parents to children, or not only in human but in all other organisms, but we can move genes between different species. So we can make insulin in bacteria, for example, or manufacture growth hormones in bacteria. And that was very important discovery, the genetic engineering, to what we call gene transfer. And
Right.
since the gene transfer in the 70s, more discoveries and more applications of DNA has made
Then
great
came,
success.
I guess, your area of expertise,
Yeah.
the agricultural productivity and the
biotechnology.
development
Yes,
of
yes,
biotech
Yeah.
derived vaccines and drugs and so
Yes,
on.
yeah.
And that was in the 80s. And
Yeah.
so we've had a steady expansion of the science,
Oh,
40s, 50s,
yes,
60s,
yes,
70s,
yes, yes.
80s.
Yes, when the term biotechnology was clear, and we started to study biotechnology as a science, we found that there is agricultural biotechnology in the field of agriculture for increasing agricultural productivity, and there's medicinal biotechnology for improving human health and human treatments of disease discoveries and so on, and the manufacturing of vaccines and the medicine.
Right.
And also there's environmental biotechnology to apply biotechnology for making the environment clean. So and there's also what we call microbial biotechnology when we work with the microorganisms. So we have 4 disciplines of fields of biotechnology: the agricultural biotechnology, the environmental biotechnology, the medicinal biotechnology, and the microorganisms of biotechnology of microorganisms.
And I guess the agricultural biotechnology is the one tasked with improving food quality.
Yes, yes.
Right? So
Yes,
talk to us
yes.
about this, because this is very important in today's world when there is global warming, climate change.
It was also the most applied sort of biotechnology for increasing human productivity, with the possibility of moving genes from plants to from one plant to another. So we started producing plants that to increase the yield of the crop, or to produce crops resistant or resilient to climate change, or resistant to diseases, or also resistant to drought or salinity, because with the climate change we expect the soil to be saline and the weather to be more hot because of temperature increase, and of course drought is also expected. So moving genes from plants that is adaptable to drought to plants that are not adapted will make these plants which produce more food adaptable to drought. That was one important application of biotechnology in the agriculture. And if we actually consider the increase in food production since the 1970s and 80s to today, we will find huge increase in in food production. With the increasing human population, that's very important. Without these approaches, new applications of biotechnology, particularly in plant breeding, increasing the food production is difficult.
Have we reached, Dr. Badr, near saturation as far as this science is concerned, or are we still, in a virgin area where there's a lot of room for improvement?
There is a lot of room for improvement. Even if we think that is what we can do, new science will come with new ideas and new discoveries that will make more investigations, and these investigations will result in more improvement of agricultural productivity.
And I guess there is no time more important for this branch of biotechnology, agricultural biotechnology, more important than today, when the world is suffering from high prices of food everywhere, global warming, increase of population globally, and so on.
And it's also important in our area of the world, because we are in a part of the world where water resources is limited, and we need to increase our food production because our human population is increasing. So we work on this. We have a genetic engineering research institute in the Agricultural Research Center that's about 40 years now, and Egypt is publish a lot of research about gene transfer and genetic engineering, but we still have to have a biosafety law, because to cultivate genetically modified plants, you need what we call a biosafety. So because you transfer one gene from one plant to another, so planting this new plant needs approval. And approvals is easy, it's not difficult. America and China, and Brazil and Argentina are planting these genetically modified plants for many years.
I understand from what you said that these are the leaders in this field.
These
globally?
are the leaders, yes, of course.
USA, China, Brazil, Argentina.
and Brazil and Argentina are the leaders.
Anywhere in Europe?
Europe is conservative, particularly Germany is conservative, because they think genetic engineering will affect the nature. There is some views about...
But there is a legitimate concern.
They do research. They import genetically modified crops and cultivate it, but they do not do much research on genetic engineering. But in England or in the United Kingdom, genetic engineering is very well. We do research, but unfortunately we don't have this biosafety law to cultivate genetically modified crops.
It's good you mentioned this, because I was going to ask you about the situation in Egypt at the moment. I mean,
yes.
how are we progressing in that very important branch of science?
We are progressing very well with regard to scientific research. But in Egypt, not only in biotechnology, scientists do research, good. But the application is not only the scientists. You need money to, as we said, biotechnology is the application for producing commercial products. To produce commercial products from science, you need money, and
from
you
the
need
private
business
sector,
money, you need private sector, investment, and so on. So with regard to genetic engineering in the agriculture sector, we are doing very well. We just only missed the biosafety law, and we also need some more investment in biotechnology, not only in cultivating crops, but also in producing vaccines and in producing some more compounds from not only plants but also microorganisms and the animals and so on. So biotechnology is a way to increase the value of the living organism by producing more products, and the value of the products can be much better because it's much essential to the human life as well.
Right. So so you need more investments from the government and the private sector.
And the private sector, of course.
Okay.
We also, biotechnology is not only for food production, it's also conserve nature. By using biotechnology, as we know that our plants and animals are endangered by climate change and by the lack of water in our country. And with the tissue culture, of course, tissue culture is one important application of biotechnology discovered in the 60s and 70s and applied very well in the Academy of Science and the Agriculture Research Center. It is a way to cultivate plants in the lab and then transfer the lab into the field. And with tissue culture, we can actually propagate our endangered plant species and to keep them for the future.
Are we doing that?
We do this. We do this in many attempts. Of course, endangered plants can be propagated through tissue culture, and of course we can isolate genes from plants growing in the desert and use these genes for crop plants to be adapted to drought conditions, because the plants growing in the desert are able to grow under low water content in the soil. So if we can encourage our crops to grow under low water content, we can save our water and increase the land we cultivate for important crops.
What about scientific researches? Are we doing enough in this area, or again do you need more financing to do more investigations and more research?
Yes.
You scientists,
Yeah,
obviously,
of course.
the scientist community.
Of course, scientific research needs fund, and we have some funding, but of course we need always more fund. The productivity of research depends on how much you put funds to the scientists. If the funds are sufficient, the results will be much better. But in this field of biotechnology, I think we are doing well compared to other countries. I am a member of a group project on African countries with NASAC. NASAC is a association of national academies of African countries.
Okay.
All African countries. And we actually propagate for using the gene editing. Gene editing is the improvement of gene technology, because gene technology, you need to do genetic gene transfer and to move one gene from plant to another or from microorganism to another.
When you do editing, you do it in the
you
same...
do editing, you work on the same gene. You don't have foreign gene into the plants, but you improve the efficiency of genes by editing genes that's already in the species. And actually we have support from the African Union to propagate for this concept. With gene editing, Africa can be self-sufficient in food conservation. That's of course very
the target. That's the
target. But with this, when I compare the position of Egypt, and Egypt, of course, is one of the leading countries in scientific research in Africa. We probably #1 with South Africa, of course. Egypt and South Africa are always competing with #1. And there are some other countries like Nigeria are doing good research. Kenya is doing. With my contribution with this group, actually, allow me to say you are doing well as a country, and even the Africans in the NASAC know how Egypt is leading in this field of research. Probably not only in biotechnology but in other countries as well. Egypt has started scientific research much earlier than many other African countries, and when I compare the position of Egypt, even worldwide, we are doing well. Of course, we need to work more and to give more funds, but we are doing well in this.
Good. What about cooperation here? I mean, so how can African countries benefit from Egyptian scientists? And how can Egyptian business sectors benefit from this rich African land in a way that would be a win-win situation?
Yes. Of course, I actually find Africa is very rich in natural resources, and they are willing to cooperate. I think we should do more about the cooperation with the African countries. Unfortunately, our cooperation, we always look for European countries to go and learn. We learn from Europe, probably that's important, but if we can also transfer our experience to African countries. And I think there are some ways and means and for cooperation with the African countries. This is one way I involved in, but probably there are many other source of cooperation, which in other fields of science as well. But I'm glad that there is, in this field, I know what the Africans are doing, and of course, some of them are doing very well. They, like us, they have many well-qualified scientists who actually studied also in the US and the European countries, and they are starting to do biotechnology in Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and the other countries. But that's good that you raised this important question of cooperation with other countries, particularly African countries.
Yeah, sure, because I mean, and after all, Egypt, as being an integral part of Africa, we Africans for decades have been dreaming of, benefiting from our resources, because for decades we've been hearing we have very rich resources, but since colonialism,
Yes, yes.
you know,
Yes.
Africa hasn't gotten up to the level
Yes,
it has the potential to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I think we also need to encourage visits and cooperation with African universities. We do agreements with European countries or European universities for cooperation because we wanted to learn from the European universities. Although most of us is good enough, but we lack some facilities. If we can have these facilities, we can actually invite African to come our universities and be experts to the Africans as well. And they have natural resources that needs exploitation. They need more research on their natural resources as well.
And I like the geographical distribution of the countries you mentioned that excel in this field. I mean, Egypt is taking northeast, Nigeria is taking West Africa, Kenya is taking East Africa, South Africa, of course, South. So, I mean, if every leader in its region, you know, does its role and the others ask for its help, I mean, we could do much better as a continent.
Yes. We have in the Ministry of Agriculture International Center for Cooperation with African. We invite them for training and teaching in the International Center, but we need more cooperation with Africa. I think for the long term, this is the area where we need more cooperation because they have resources probably we need. They have land we can use for our agriculture. We can cooperate with them for improving their production of food and then importing wheat and some crops we need from them. So cooperation with Africa is very important, particularly in this field of biotechnology.
Indeed.
Because even in Europe, most application of biotechnology concerns manufacturing drinks and so on. But with Africa, it would be more agriculture, more food production.
Especially, again, something we mention regularly here, but it is the fact that Egypt is the gate to and from Africa.
Yes, of course. We actually center for training African countries because we are good enough to be experts for the African countries, and we need to improve our image and actually do more cooperation in the field. We have projects in Tanzania, in other countries as well, but we need more. I think cooperation with African countries, not only in biotechnology but in other fields as well, is important.
Indeed.
It may not be part of this topic, but it is important.
Actually, it is, and I like the fact that you mentioned it.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that on this very important and nice note, unfortunately, I don't know why time has elapsed so quickly, but unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. So on this very important note, Dr. Badr, that you mentioned about the Egypt-Africa cooperation in all fields, not just in agricultural, biotechnology, or food security issues. We've come to the end, unfortunately, of this episode of Business Insider. So on behalf of you, dear viewers, we thank very much our dear guest. Always a great pleasure,
thank you.
Sir, really.
It was a pleasure
Dr.
for
Abdel
me.
Fattah Badr, the Professor of Plant Genetics and Biodiversity at Helwan University, and we hope to see you again soon, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, dear viewers, for watching Business Insider. This is Mohammed Abdel Rahim, and this is good night.